All right, let's get started. Let's get started. All right, everyone. All right, am I on this side?
You're over there, man.
All right. Hope you had a great day. Are you sitting? Are we sitting?
I thought we agreed to sit.
Okay, we're sitting.
We talked about it and we were like, we're gonna sit, and then.
Oh, God. All right, we're sitting. Did you have a great day?
I had a great day.
Yeah.
Did you guys have a great day?
Yeah.
Yes?
All right,
Okay.
all right. Well, we'll do more of these, and as long as COVID lets us, we'll keep doing it. So, well,
Or
thank you.
virtual, here we come.
Yeah, all right, so, yeah, let's jump into this. Where's customer success headed? So we took our crystal ball out, really looked hard into it, and we really don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
but...
Conjecture coming your way, guys, get prepared.
But what's super important, in fact, oftentimes, and you've heard me say this, right? There's dots and there's lines, okay? So when you think about metrics, when you think about change, there's dots and there's lines. Dots are like if you have some metrics and you can't pull a line out of it, there's really maybe nothing. But sometimes you draw a line and it kind of makes an arrow. Maybe it goes down to the, one way or the other way. And that's sort of when you find something that's interesting. So let me give you some dots over the years, and then maybe we can draw a line into the future. Okay, so that's sort of really what I want to try to do. All right, so a quick look back. And this is actually from the point of view of ChurnZero, so I apologize for that ahead of time. But we made a bet on customer success 6 years ago, right? And so I wanted to look back, and looking ahead, I wanted to look back and see what were we saying 6 years ago, what we were saying 4 years ago, what we were saying 2 years ago, and can I draw a line? Okay. All right, so in 2015, Mark Hayes and I, actually, he's our CTO, we went on a tour where we met 24 CCOs, okay? And we had a prototype in hand, and we were talking to them about, what is now known as ChurnZero. And this is one of the slides that we were talking about, right? And so how did we get here? Why are we here as a company? Like, why are Mark and I here? And we had spent, Mark and I spent most of the decade chasing growth, right? We were really focused on customer acquisition. The technology we had built was for sales and marketing, right? Really focused and hardcore, it was all about customer acquisition. But it turned out what was really killing our last company was customer churn, right? And so it was that pain that got us there, right? So that was the first slide. In fact, one of the most interesting things about that slide is I can pull it out and use it again today, right? So that was great, right? It's like, okay, I could use those slides again today to talk about what we're doing here. All right, so that was 2015. 2016, we went out and raised our first round of funding. So remember, the first slide was to CCOs, people like you. This second slide was for investors. Investors had to hear something different. It's like, well, why is there such a big opportunity, right? Oh, by the way, the opportunity for us as a company is the opportunity for you as professionals, okay? So we are very much aligned, right? Like if it works for ChurnZero, it's gonna work for you, okay? So what was the rationale for investors? Well, you're all part of B2B subscription companies. Most of us are on SaaS. Everyone's maturing. There's more of them every day, okay? Retention and success teams who are recognized to be integral to the subscription model, okay? And subscription is now the new default business model, right? So like if you start a new company today, guess what? You're gonna be SaaS, you're gonna be subscription, okay? That's great for us, that's great for you. So that's 2016. 2018, right? We convinced them that customer success was real. So then we had a different issue. It's like, well, why now? Right? Like why, and so this is kind of a more complex slide, but basically, we were trying to make the case that, like most ecosystems, right, it starts off kind of bumpy, the birth of the CCO, the rise of the CCO, and then all of a sudden everyone just like gets it, okay? And so you scale, right? So once again, for us as a company, we're betting on everyone getting at the same time, and there's scale involved, okay? Also, once again, good for you, right? You'll get lots of different opportunities, career opportunities, people wanting to be CSMs. So this is actually, we're very well aligned. 2020 was COVID year. Not a great year, but it turned out this was your time, right? Because all of a sudden, new business dried up. All of a sudden, everyone was freaking out. Everyone was protecting their assets, and the assets were customers, okay? So everyone all of a sudden said, you know, like at the board meeting, it's like, oh, okay, well, that guy is not doing anything. How about you, right? Like, how about the CCO? And so it was a really interesting year that all of a sudden heads turned, and all of a sudden was people were corralling around the CCO. And then the last 12 months, right? The customer success platform vendors, these people that, you know, are our peer group, people, you know, we like, people we compete with, right? Lots of investment, right? $150 million in venture investments, $1 billion in exit. So great. So the moral of the story here is not necessarily like it's a great business to be in. It's actually a great space to be in. Okay, so I'm connecting. I put down these dots, right? And then if you draw the line, it's very positive. Okay, so at least you know, so the past has been very positive. In fact, let me ask you this, right? Like you've been here since the beginning, right? And I'm painting a very positive story, but has it gone the way you expected with customer success?
Yes, yes, and no. You know, we felt pretty good early on that we had we were servicing a real need. You all were very vocal about the fact that we were servicing a real need, but you know, change is hard, especially change of the size and degree that a lot of us are working on in our organizations. That's hard. That doesn't come easy. And so I honestly thought it would be a bit slower. Like I remember, you know, 5 years ago we were like giving the definition of customer success on every call we had. I was like, oh my God, we're never gonna get out of this. And so the rate of acceleration has been fabulous to witness and be part of. And I feel like that's a reflection of the community of CS professionals. It's a very generous and thoughtful and open community that shares with one another, much more so than in a lot of other industries, which is very cool for us. It means we get to learn from one another. And I think that's helped with a lot of the acceleration. Is just, you know, it builds momentum, it builds excitement. We learn from one another. So it's been faster than I thought, but that's great.
Now, is Bob London here? So,
he had to bop out, he told me, but.
Okay, so Bob London, he goes under the title of Chief Listening Officer, and he made the switch from marketing into CS. And he told me, it's like, wow, like marketers, like they're at each other's throats. Like it's like, you know, it's everyone eats each other. And the reason why he loves being in CS is like it was a very welcoming, like, you know, people wanted him and people seemed to cooperate and people seemed, anyway, so it was, you know, just to your point, you know, the cooperation's there. Okay, but you said it was hard.
It is hard. I mean, anything worth doing usually is. I sound like an inspirational poster right now, but you know, it is like, if we believe in what we're doing and we believe in putting the customer at the center of everything, you know, but it's not like there was a hole so much that CS was filling. We were rounding out stuff that other groups may have been doing in a different way, and we're like, hey, if that can become our thing, we can do it well, we can do it better to the positive, you know, to the positive for our team, for our customers, for our entire business. But that's a really difficult thing to do. It's a really difficult space to navigate. You know, the hardest thing to fight is status quo, especially if things are like not terrible. Then when you're there being like, hey, let's completely rethink how we do this, that's a rough road to walk. So
this is what, like when we started the company, there's a part of me that said, come on, this is dumb. I mean, like, come on, it's too obvious.
I am just learning this now for the
No, it was like, okay, oh, so you're saying that we should bring great technology to help customer teams understand their customers, you know, and manage them better. Like, come on, do you say that out of your mouth? It's like, it's been done, right? Like, it's going to be done a million times. So I think what was surprising to me was when I started, it was like, I was always on the edge of my seat thinking, like, did we miss something? It just felt so obvious anyway. Now, part of it is the obviousness means that was inevitable, right? So I think, you know, it's inevitable that this is going to happen. So maybe we should switch to the future.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so looking forward. So now that I've drawn these lines, we're going to talk about three things, okay? Net revenue retention is red hot, watch out, okay? Digital transformation, try extreme digital transformation. And then customer success flexes and it will be bumpy. Okay, so let's talk about all three. Let me start by NRR, and then have you chime in. Okay. So it's actually ridiculous what's happening with net revenue retention. Now
you got a swag buck for every time NRR got said today.
Yeah, exactly. And it's actually it's kind of come out of nowhere. In fact, it's an overnight sensation, years in the making. In fact, let me. I feel like I'm telling old stories, but I will tell you the story. So the story was, I've been raising money for many years now, and net revenue retention in the beginning, maybe like 20 years ago when I raised the first big round of funding for a different company, it was an oh, by the way metric, right? It was like, they gave me the term sheet, we had negotiated, they were looking at all our contracts, and then all of a sudden, like the third meeting, and do this, oh, by the way, what's your customer metrics? And they, it was like a checkbox. They didn't really care. It was an oh, by the way metric. And then what? Then it made it on the big dash. Everyone has a big dashboard with too many metrics. So it finally makes it on the big dashboard somewhere, on the dashboard. Yeah, just down there. We have a lot of metrics like that. Yeah. And then it becomes an impact metric. So impact metric's like, oh, that's interesting. This is a top 10 metric, right? Let's talk about that. And then I think in the last 18 to 20, 36 months, it's now a qualifying metric. So what do I mean by a qualifying metric? Qualifying metric is, I don't care what the rest of your company looks like. I don't care how excited I am about your people. I don't care how excited I am about your technology. If your NRR is not right, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified. You're out, right? Oh, you're growing 5x. Oh, but your NRR is terrible. You're out. Oh, you're PhDs from MIT, and you invented the next, space yogurt. Your NRR is terrible. You're out.
I'd invest in that.
Yeah. So it's become a qualifying metric, and I'm saying that not necessarily because of you, but I'm saying that okay. So you've been on.
I experienced this a lot. I've been lucky to go through all of our funding rounds. I remember our Series A and Series B most distinctly, and in the AU, I got asked about it. There were some questions. It was certainly part of the package. It wasn't, after the deal was done. In our Series B, it mattered. We had long sessions about it. We're really lucky to be supported by JMI, and they wanted to understand it. How does it cut with different customers? How do you calculate it? What do you do when it looks certain ways? I as our CS leader, I went from having to say this is my metric and we're doing some things on it, to I had to know it backwards and forwards and be able to really give them our picture of how we were trying to move it and why. And the difference between those two times was 18 months, was it?
Yeah,
something like that, yeah. So it was just, even for myself, it was a completely different experience.
So qualifying metric. Qualifying metric is absolutely different from an important metric, right? So qualifying metric means that it's going to get a lot of scrutiny. So, all right. So revenue retention is your friend, okay? And let's talk about the ways it's your friend. Maybe you can talk about a few ways. I'll talk about, a couple of ways as well.
Yeah, another, in addition to NRR, we've all been talking about a lot. Kristen said it really well yesterday. She said, you're not running a happiness team, you're running a revenue team. And that's an important shift for us. And I think as relationship-focused individuals, it can feel icky, it can feel smarmy. Anytime we talk about money, we get uncomfortable. We gotta shake that out and get over it, because the way you get a seat at the table is when you add to the business. If you're just a cost center, then you're always a drag. And we know we're not a cost center. We know we're retaining customers. We know we're helping them grow. We know we're getting to value. So we got to own that position. And when you own that position, good things happen. You ideally get more budget. You get more space in the decision-making rooms. You get a seat at the table, all those good things. Ideally, you start to be able to have more time, that's dedicated to the needs of customers, from product, from marketing, even from sales. You get to get them to follow your lead a little bit more. So it's there's a lot of really positive things that come out of us fully taking this space as a revenue generating arm of the business.
And we've been talking about this for a while. So maybe the most interesting thing I've seen at this conference, Kristen Ayer from Success League, you were talking about metrics, and one of the metrics you brought up was what percentage of revenue or expenses ought to be allocated towards customer success, right? And it was, you said up to 20%, right? It was anywhere from 5 to 20, probably 10 to 20. and having that conversation, right, which probably you've never, like 3 years ago, we would not have had like what percentage of your revenue. That's important, okay? Because then you don't ask for budget, you're allocated budget, okay? And then you decide you decide how to spend your budget. Right? So that's super important is when when you become a qualifying metric, budget will be allocated for you as a percentage of revenue, and you can decide how to spend it, right? And so you may always want more. It may never be enough, okay? But getting the allocation rather than asking for allocation, I think is super important. Now, not all of us are going to be here, but I think that's what's going to be happening very soon. Okay, so net revenue retention is also your friend, okay? And in this case, your friends can actually make you do kind of unnatural things, like, so really bad behavior. So your friends do, anyway, hopefully you don't have friends like this, but all right. So it's your friend. Okay, so guess what? Once again, all heads turn to you, okay? And by the way, the bigger the company you are, the more of the burden you own, right? I know, Amy, or like, your group at Tenable, every year, like 80% of the revenue probably comes from your group, right? 80%, right? When you're smaller, it's 80% comes from new sales, right? But when you get bigger, it's 80% comes from the CCO, right? So all heads will turn to you. Now, like most things that are focusing on one metric and only one metric is going to, and by the way, you are going to focus on it because you're going to be asked to focus on it, right? Because the investors want it, and the board wants it, and your CEO wants it, and then it's going to say, oh, how am I going to juice NRR? And then weird things will start to happen. So let's talk about some of the weird things that will happen. Maybe you can start on the weird things that will happen.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that this can go, but, a lot of the things that we look at sales when you're really pushing on new sales and we go like, oh my God, look at the terrible stuff, like terrible product fit that's coming down, bad expectations, like we'll have our own versions of that. You may do things with your pricing and packaging that don't feel super great, but allow you to do some fun math that gets you in a better spot. Your team will start to get pushed a bit on the money side of things, which I think I was telling you the other day that the number of CSMs that I interview, who either in the space or who might want to work at ChurnZero, a common line I hear from them is like, oh, well, we got made into a sales team. And when you dig into what that is, we have sort of this breed of CS that needs to get used to the fact that the job is changing and growing, and they need to evolve with that. But there will be you probably will trip over the line a couple of times in the wrong direction, and you'll feel a little salesy. Other things you think will happen?
Yeah, look, some of these are going to be things you have to do and should do, and then sometimes you're just going to be pushed ahead of time, like, land and expand. It's like, okay, well, we're going to do a land and expand strategy. Well, what does that mean? We don't have anything like that, right? And all of a sudden, like, weird things happen. You, like, put out a product there thinking that you can actually sell it at low cost to expand, and it doesn't happen, right? Now, good things might happen is you'll segment aggressively. Actually, you may segment so aggressively, you may say, you see SMB clients? We're just going to, I don't care. Like, we're just going to lose them all, right? Because I'm going to focus on the enterprise clients. So that actually also is...
Don't actually do that, please.
Yes, that can be weird. But the math, like if you focus too hard on the math, right?
You lose the human element of it. And so that's what we have to remember. We all got into what we do because we like relationships. We like building with other people, finding value.
Yeah, that's what it was. I was going to say that. I was going to say it wasn't a human thing.
Was my point better?
It was... It's when NRR, when you focus on the enterprise, right? Let's say you have a mix. Not everyone here has a mixed model, but those of you who have a mixed model, like, yeah, it's easier to, they have more money, they have more budget, they have a bigger footprint, and so it's not unhuman to not focus on these folks, but it's probably not the best long-term strategy. So it's just a bad.
It also depends on what you mean by focus. Like abandoning them entirely, bad plan.
Bad plan.
Servicing them in a different way, leaning into digital, leaning into tech touches, leaning into self-service resources.
Great plan.
Great plan.
Great
Do
plan.
that.
Great plan. Okay. So anyway, NRR is your friend, and NRR is your friend, right? So make sure you do it carefully. Now, I will say one more thing. Friends don't let friends get screwed by NRR as well, and And so when people put out these numbers, hey, what's a great NRR? I'll tell you, it'll trickle down. Okay, it'll trickle. So, well, Slack does 170%, right? And Zoom does 100 and blah blah percent. It's like, God dang it. Okay, so here's the issue, right? Make sure benchmarking is dangerous in NR, very dangerous, and make sure. And I know it's hard. It's going to be hard. I don't have an answer for this, but you have to try to find like-minded companies to be a part of. Okay, so Slack, right? Let's just talk about Slack. All right. Slack wants to sell into Procter and Gamble, and I sell a team of 20, right? Because that's what they do, right? The one team can use Slack and a team of 20, and there's 20,000 more people at P&G that I'm going to, sell to. And of course, my NRR is going to be amazing, right? Because I sold 20, and I have 20,000 more to go. I sold another 20, my NRR is 200%. How about that? How about me now? Anyway, that's
it's also true across. I mean, depending on the type of businesses you support. Yes, Slack could be selling into P&G, and it's very large. But I'll have a lot of people say oh my God, I'm seeing the 140s and things like that, and they're like, but we support SMB. I'm like, well, your metrics are not the same there. I mean, my Untapped team knows, when you're in the SMB space, there's volatility there that's out of your control. So you want to make sure you're not setting yourself up for failure on NRR, on any other metric. You want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, or you're just going to cause a lot of heartache and stress and worry about getting in the right direction when you may not have as much worry.
I will guarantee I will make bets right after this. I'm going to take bets. I'm going to give you odds that your board is going to talk to you about product-led growth sometime in the next 18 months, okay? And that's because they're like, well, I've heard this thing called product-led growth and blah, 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 and it's going to lead to great NR, and it will, but not all of us have products that can actually do that, okay? But be prepared to have that conversation. Be prepared to be benchmarked, and be prepared to just negotiate that benchmarking, okay? So it's very dangerous. If I go back to the Procter & Gamble example, if SAP, right, is going to sell Procter & Gamble, they're going to sell a big honking thing all at once, and so the upsell will probably be minimal. No, it probably won't be, but it'll be less, right? I'm going to sell you 20,000 seats at once, versus the 20. So very dangerous. Make sure you're compared to the right folks. All right, NRR. All right, fantastic. Use it. Don't let it abuse you. All right, let's talk about extreme digital transformation. All right, so we're going to use an analogy. Let's talk about restaurants. Okay, so before you get your menu. Actually, why don't you describe this? Right, we talked about this. Yeah.
So we've all been to a restaurant before. Come on this journey with me. So you go in, you get your menu. The waiter comes back and forth. You eat all the bread before you make a decision. There's a lot of exchanges between you and another human to get your menu, to take your order, to eventually get your bill. To leave tip on the table. All these things, and then COVID hit, and it was really dangerous for us to engage with one another. And restaurants did a fabulous job of really turning on a pin there and starting to rethink how they came at their customer engagements. Sure, some went sort of well, don't come inside our building, we'll just send your food to you. That's one way to go. But the ones that did try to keep customers coming in the door, they went the direction of what can we do to sort of change this experience, make it more digital, but without taking away a lot of the things that we like about being at a restaurant. So menus went into QR codes that you scanned, and you order on your phone, and sure, a human still has to bring you your food. We haven't figured that out yet, but we will. And then when you go to pay, same thing, you're on your phone. So completely changed the restaurant experience. And it kept the parts that were really great about going to a restaurant. You're out of your own four walls, you're eating something you don't know how to cook, you don't have to clean up the mess, all positives. But it really changed a lot of how we moved through it. And for a lot of people, I'll say, I like the experience. To me, it's smoother. I can move through a restaurant more efficiently if I'm in a hurry, or I can take my time if I'm not. So this same sort of reimagining what it means to still have human experiences, but put them in a digital world is something I think we can learn from them.
And so COVID accelerated restaurants by what, 5-10 years, right? All of a sudden, boom, this was kind of happening, it was going to happen, and then boom, it happened. Okay. And it was a shock to the system. We wished that upon nobody, but it happened. And it turns out that it's actually maybe better, okay? Maybe. At times, I actually think it's going to be better, But you go to a restaurant and you look around, you take a look at all the servers, and they're running around crazy. There's not enough people, right? This almost has to happen. It started because of COVID, but now it has to happen because they don't have enough people, right? So okay, I won't say that. Like they transformed, and it is going to stick. Anyway, so that's their extreme digital transformation. All right, how about you? Okay, here's what I'm going to say. You're going to be asked for one of two things or both these things. You're going to ask for growth and you're going to be asked for profit, right? That's what you're going to be asked for. One of two things. Some of you will be asked for both. Okay, if you're going to grow, if you're raising a lot of money, if you're doing extremely well, you're going to have to double your CS team. You're going to have to triple your CS team. Or you're going to be asked for profit. It's like, oh, that was really fun. That was a nice run, but now you're going to do more with less. Okay, well, at least you're going to do. Yeah, you're gonna have to do more or less. You're gonna have to do a profit, right? So you're gonna have to get one or the other. Either way, okay, there's either the war for talent or the war for time, right? These two things are happening right now. The war for talent is real. I've spoken to many of you about it. It is hard to find CS people. It was hard to find CS people a year ago. It is impossible to find a CS person today. So the war for talent is extreme. And oh, by the way, if you're going for profit, you have to do more or less. So, no matter where you look, okay, you have to think about what happened to the restaurant, right? And what they did. And now, COVID initiated that, but now they have to do it because, either they have to do more or less, right? Or they just cannot find the people. So I sell software for a living, okay? But I do believe, right, that you have to think about extreme digital transformation. Whatever you're doing, I think you have to do more of. Like whatever we're doing, I think we have to do more of. I'll go back to Chris. I'm gonna quote you again. I was in your session yesterday, and you were saying that sometimes tech touch, like don't worry about a low touch thing or a tech touch thing. Sometimes that's better. It's better. Okay. A human being is not always best.
There are opportunities to meet people in different ways, and different types of touches are going to be different. And I think one of the big things we all feel as CS professionals is that we're being asked to do more. Like one of my CSMs owns more of the process, owns more numbers, there's more pressure on them. So when we talk about the time they have in the day, how we can help them use it efficiently, effectively, in a smart way, in a maximum impact way, you really have to think about what you can do to weaponize them. And this is something that's been very cool for me, again, out there talking to CSMs and interviewing. I used to never be asked about what kind of tools we had to support our CS team. Maybe that's because people assume we drink our own champagne, which is a fine assumption. I get asked now. I get asked because CSMs are out there saying, hey, I don't want to join an organization that's not going to set me up for success.
Right.
That's not going to give me data, that's not going to give me space, that's not going to support me, and then they're still going to stick the number on me and be mad when it doesn't work out. So we see the CSMs asking that, we ourselves as leaders. I'm sure if you guys have looked around for jobs, you've asked about it. So that's been a really interesting shift as well.
Yeah, by the way, you always kind of look for other departments sort of as a, guide, because like for salespeople, right? When we hire salespeople, they're going to ask, well, what kind of tool set do you have? Oh, am I going to, am I have so many automation there? Do I have data? Are you going to, get numbers for me, get emails for me? And if the answer is no, they're like, okay, I'm out, right? And you're saying the exact same thing, right? Like oh, okay, well, we use Salesforce and spreadsheets. Oh, I'm out, right? I'm done. So anyway, so the war for talent is not only not enough of them, but now they have qualifying expectations for you. Okay. Anyway, so extreme digital transformation. Today we had, our first session was really with my fellow founders and CEOs, and at some point, like that tech stack, for better for worse, is like, all right, at some point, like you may need an LMS, right? Like everyone's. Like we did that. Like at one point, a third of our CS times was just training people.
Oh yeah, when I did, I was going through and mapping like where we spend our day, where our time sucks were, and things like that. Training was just, it was crushing us.
Right.
I'm having CSM saying like, oh, I can only handle insert small number of customers here because I'm spending an inordinate amount of time training people.
Right.
And it was also, we were seeing impacts on the product side as well, because we're looking at it and saying like, all right, we're getting good adoption amongst the people that we can touch one-on-one and get that interaction and really pull them along. But for other people, we can't talk to everyone. Even if you're enterprise, this is the dirty little secret, is even if you're enterprise, you still can't talk to everyone who uses your product. So you are still a high velocity CSM, whether you realize it or not. You may think you're high touch, you're still high velocity. And so for us, it was just, we had to realize that we needed other resources to accomplish the same things.
I think by everything a year before you need it, okay, at least. So that's the, and it's, by the way, I think it's cheaper. It's cheaper than CSMs. I mean, the technology is actually kind of cheaper. I mean, it's, unless it doesn't implement, then it's terrible. But, but generally it's, all right. Last one, okay, customer success will flex, okay, and it will be bumpy. Look, qualifying metric, you own up to 80% of the revenue, okay? You should be flexing, okay? You should be asking for exactly what you need. You should be expecting something. You should, and by the way, expect it. Don't ask for it, expect it. Actually, one of the things that Ab and I were talking about was, sometimes I think, when a new department is growing, right, and this has been, you ask, like, we're asking for too much, right? We should ask for less and expect more. That's the flexing part of it. This is almost like, this is my challenge to you, right? This is what I, so today we talked about, a mantra, right? And it's to challenge the audience. And my challenge to you is that you need to flex. And oh, by the way, you're not going to be jerks about it, okay? Because you're CS people. So you're not going to be jerks about it, but bring as much of it as you can, okay? And expect it to be bumpy. And expect it to be bumpy, why? Right? Lots of reasons.
There's a myriad of reasons. Like I said, we're all trying to do something new. New is hard. Breaking the status quo is challenging. People are going to question you. They're going to want results before they give you the means to get those results. There's a lot of things out there, and a lot of us as CS leaders were earlier on this journey because CS wasn't a thing, that long ago. So it means, some of us might get ahead of ourselves and ask for more than we can actually handle, or, we may not make the right partnerships across the organization to really sort of get what we need out of things. I will say even a little bit, CS, sometimes we have a bit of a chip on our shoulder. I even joked with many of you about where we sit in the organization and the struggles we're against, so our own mindset can be in our way sometimes. So I think a lot of it is saying, like, there's a myriad of reasons that it's not going to go smoothly, but if you keep going, the momentum is on your side. The space is on your side. What investors expect, what you can produce for your company is on your side.
Math is on your side.
Yes.
Okay? The math is on your side. I've been in a lot of industries where the math was not on my side, okay? And so there was a lot of hand waving, right? There was a lot of convincing, and that doesn't, at some point you just run out of room, right? Mm-hmm. But when the math is on your side, it's actually quite amazing. Anyway, so so the flex, right? So you can imagine doing all these things, like, from the top to bottom. I'm hearing these things more and more, right? Of course, the budget, you get all the renewals, upsells, and you get expansion. You get everything. You get everything post-sales, right? The new sales strategy has to be super supportive of customer success, right? Because in NRR and even gross revenue retention, losing a customer hurts in many ways, right? Once again, because it's a qualifying metric, you may actually have the opportunity to say, well, we just don't want crap accounts anymore. Now, the argument about crap is actually going to be deep and long, right? Anyway,
salespeople on renewals yet?
But new sales strategy will start to become supportive of customer success. And in fact, one thing I hear is because CCOs will own the customer, CCOs will own the business, CCOs will own people and manage people, it's going to be the best path to the CEO. Okay, so all these things, is the flex over the next few. Some of it already has happened for you. Some of it will happen to you, and some of these, we are hoping will happen to all of us, right? So that is the flex. Now, is there anyone want to talk about that, or should we want to go into Q&A?
Yeah, why don't we do some Q&A?
All right, well, so let's go into Q&A, but I want to tell one story about the flex. So for Q&A, ask us anything about what we've talked about. Ask us anything about, customer success and what maybe your thoughts about what the future is. But let me tell you a story about the Flex. So when I was in my late 20s and I was raising my first round of funding for a very cool company that I had built, and I was going up and down Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park where all the VCs are, and I would go in, I would like, oh, please, ma'am, please, sir, would you spare some dollars, right, to invest in my company? And it's like, I was getting a lot of no's, right? It's like getting, oh, well, no, it's nice and cute, but I'm not getting a no. And then one day, I was like, I'm just going to change my approach. So I walked. I was in the bathroom, and I was like, who are these the lucky SOBs that get to invest in my company, right? Like, you just have dirty dollar bills. I have a unique thing. I have this great company, right? Are you the lucky person who's going to get to invest in that? And that really changed everything, right? Now, once again, if you said the same thing to yourself, you're not going to be a jerk on the other side because none of you are jerks, and I'm borderline not a jerk, right? So it will come out okay. So you can always say that to anyway. It really changed the way I approached fundraising, and it was for the best, right? Once again, I expect the money. It's just who's going to give it to me. So I'll stop there. Hopefully that story, will help you, in your career. But let's go to Q&A, and we have a microphone we want to send out. Yes, let's go over here.
Excellent. So I've actually got 2 questions, but you only need to answer one of them.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier, hiring CS talent is extremely difficult. So my 2 questions, and again, you just choose one. Why is it so difficult? Or question 2, if you could draw up a perfect customer success individual, how would you draw them up?
It's difficult because I think one of the reasons it's difficult is because our space has changed so much. If you had a title, CSM was a title that didn't even really exist a few years ago. So there are a lot of sort of parallel or sort of other jobs that have been morphed into CS, account manager, account executive, there's all these things that are out there. So there's a lot of people who have been doing a job that has elements of CS in it, who either don't identify that way or for whatever reason they don't want to make that change. So finding someone who, who really aligns with that experience and is looking for that, I think that comes along with the shift. I also think it's because our counterparts in sales and marketing have done a great job building a pipeline for their, like you start as an SDR and then you become a sales exec, and that's how you fill your team. CS needs to do the same thing. We sort of want someone to come in already great at customer relations. None of us are sort of born being great at things. You have to invest in bringing those people up. So I think we need to think about the feeder positions on the team that not only can be a big boost for us in how we work with customers and how productive we are and efficient we are, but then also allow us to sort of grow that team up within our own ranks.
There's also $1 trillion of money raised to invest in organizations that are now all hiring, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to hire anyone, right? There's a sales and marketing conference going on right now down the street, and same thing, right? It's impossible to hire, right? HR, impossible to hire. I just think it's now it's going to be temporary. It's like a housing market. Maybe it'll go away, but right now it's like the housing market. I just don't see it changing in the next 12 to 18 months, right? So you should just assume it's going to be hard. You're going to be always 3 months behind, if not 6 months behind. And so, make alternative plans, okay? All right, yes, sir?
We have quite a bit of lateral movement at our company. We've got like our community management team, and we've had our onboarding team and people who move into CS. I'm just curious at ChurnZero specifically, like if you have particular teams that tend to be incubators for eventual CS, and then conversely, if you have people who move from CS into other teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our customer success associates, which is sort of our main feeder into being a customer success manager. When we took a look at where we were spending our time, there were things that required a human. We couldn't fully put into a digital approach, but it also didn't require a a high-level human, if you will. And so we said, all right, there's an opportunity to do some customer work and teach someone the ropes of working with customers and doing customer communication, and to save the CSM time and have a support system for them. So our customer success associates are a big feeder there. Our implementation team, they tend to be very technical, but some of them get interested in and eventually working more on the sort of relations side of things. Our support team is a great feeder into our implementation team. That's always been a lovely spot for us to get them to know all the details, and then we put them into implementation. And I'm sorry, I feel like you asked the second part of the question that I've now forgotten.
Right.
Yes. This is highly specific to me, and those of you that were in the product session with me earlier, sorry to repeat this one. I think great product talent can come from a bunch of different places. Maybe because it's my personal story, but also because I've seen it work on my own product team. I think pulling from your customer success organization into product is a really cool experience. Yeah. You get a product team that is entrenched in what it means to be a customer, what their challenges are, what they think about every single day, and that's where you get good product from. Yeah. So I think CSMs can go into product. I had support and implementation have gone into QA. We also had a CSM recently moved into sales engineering, which we were really excited about because we wanted more of that, again, that entrenchment in what our customers need on the sales side to make sure they're delivering us the best fit and the best expectations they can. I think it's important to always talk to especially with people who are earlier in their career, they get so set on like the only way to succeed is just to go upwards. Like we only talk about like, so many people say, I want to manage people. I'm like, why? Love my team, but why? Like, it's just like, so it's just because they think it, and you get things like, well, I like coaching, I like mentoring, that's great, because that's an important part of being a good people leader. But I also think it's because we don't talk a lot about other options, about other ways to explore what you could go and how you could use your skill set in a potentially different capacity, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the farm system is a really important thing to think about within CS. I hear a lot of SDRs becoming CS, but that's because salespeople just hire so many SDRs, and then half of them hate it, right? Because it's hard, right? And it's the first job out of college, and so all of a sudden there's these people like, hey, do you really want Doug? All right, says, okay, we'll give Doug a try, right? So, and that's okay, right? Because then they know the product, they know the company, so it's actually not a bad thing. But why not do your own farm team? Like, why not create the CS? We call them CSAs, right? Like, they just do maybe some of the create an SDR version of your CSMs, okay? And create your own farm team, right? Because you'll need it as much. Okay, so this sounds horrible. Okay, sorry.
Always a good start.
This sounds, okay, all right, all right, I'm gonna say it. All right, so.
Here we go.
So we hire, oh my God. All right. So we hire a lot of salespeople. We hire a lot of CSMs, right? Because we have a lot of new business. And then when the new business converts, we have a lot of customers. Okay. So these are bulk hires. Sorry, they're bulk hires. All right. So we need a lot of them, right? And so any place where there's a hire where the stream doesn't end, right? And by the way, as your company grows, like it will never end. You'll need more CSMs. That's where you have to think about the farm. Okay. Because if you just spend all your time hiring people with 2 to 5 years experience as external, you're just going to run out. Okay? In fact, we are running out, right? So create your own, the farm team. Anyway, great question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So my question's more about the future focus kind of perspective. So I'm noticing with our product, and you guys could respect this, is just like it's the first to market, industry leading kind of thing. So I'm finding my conversations with these hospital directors, chiefs of pharmacy, it's no longer about my application. It's like, okay, well, what can I improve in my operations about this? It's like everything around our app, and I feel like we're just evolving conversations to no longer be, I need to know the product, I need to know the hospital industry, and like it's just getting bigger and bigger, and like A, super overwhelmed, B, super intimidating to talk to like a CNO and be like, yeah, make this decision. So I guess just looking to the future, should we hire teams, or should we like hire people who used to be in that space? We have a clinical team, 2 people. They're basically my translator for these calls. And I don't know, I'm just kind of curious because you guys also industry leading. So what do you guys
Yeah.
do?
Oh my goodness.
You want me to start?
I totally want you to answer this question, yes.
I mean, it's the consummate challenge. We work in software, then we're expected to be consultants, you know. I mean, our customers are wonderful, and we deal with the same thing, where I have a CSM who, you know, is great at their job, and they're being asked VP level questions. And so and we want to support our customers because we want to be part of that growth with them. You know, if you only focus on that button does this, that's not value. So you have to engage in the why. And if you invest in what makes people successful, then they'll bring you along with them. So I don't think you can avoid the consultation. I do think it's important to draw your lines on what you'll commit to, because you can go too far down the rabbit hole. It's how you end up looking at your journey map and where your customers spend your time. You're like, why are we on calls for 10 hours a week with this one customer? Well, we maybe went like too far down that one rabbit hole. So I think some of it is knowing where your bounds are, because you feel comfortable to coach your team to that standard, making sure your customers know what that bounds is. And then if they still want something beyond that, that's where you can look at something like professional services. I think it's really important to make sure, you know, there's the question of like, should we monetize CS? Your baseline program should be enough for someone to be successful. And if they're not, then you're missing the mark. If professional services is filling a gap, then you're missing the mark. But if people want more, then it is fair that there is, you know, that you expand the relationship to give them more. So I think it's just about finding where that divide is for you.
I also think there's like using your system, using your service, using your product, best practices. Okay, and this is the one that's maybe hard, right? Because people kind of want to be spoon-fed that. But if there's a way you can talk about that in bulk, in volume, like, you know, that's not really part of extreme digital transformation, but that's the one to many, right? Like make it repeatable, and then consultation on top of that when you're ready, right? So, you know, how do you sort of weaponize, right? How do you make sure, how can you get best practices in bulk to people so it's not sort of on one person over and over again?
I do also think it varies depending on how technical or specific your industry is. Like, it sounds like you've got a high degree of specific, like, got to know hospital and insurance policy.
Yeah, that sounds scary.
That sounds really difficult. Yeah, I'm already
why don't you
sweating
try
a little
this?
bit. Like,
Did
you know,
you
Monica
try the
was talking
scalpel?
earlier about, you know, they do machine learning. Like, she's not a coder. We shouldn't expect her and her team to do that, you know? So I do think you need to know where the line is. And then again, perhaps it is another position, be it professional service or just part of your CS org, you know, that can handle the more technical or the more complex parts of it.
All right. I'm actually not keeping track of time, Hunter. What does that mean? What does that mean? Oh, 5. It's 5 o'clock? We're out of time? Okay.
Oh.
All right. No, let's not do one more. All right. So let me tell you this, right? So this is the only time I'll really push ChurnZero. So look, what you can expect from us and what you probably should expect from us and push us to do is just provide an excellent experience the best we can. We're not always going to succeed, but whether it's doing great content, putting on events, you know, building our product, servicing you as a customer, right? Just expect that from us, right? And, you know, we will work as hard as we can to try to deliver it. So, I mean, that's what we're about. And hopefully you had a great time at this conference, and we're so grateful that you came out and braved all this chaos to come here. And if you want one more drink, I'm buying. So, so we're gonna meet downstairs at the Hamilton, which is out the door to the right, and we'll meet at the second bar. There's 2 bars in Hamilton, this inner bar, and we'll meet there, and hopefully there won't be a whole lot of people there, and we'll just you know, grab a drink. So anyway, thank you for coming, I appreciate it.